Hello, Timo here, and welcome back. Thanks very much for joining me today. In today's video, we're going to be adding some new features to the table, and we are going to be using the Tanstack table. Some of these features that we're going to be adding is the filters to filter the table to show what particular information I want to see, sorting, and pagination too as well, because maybe they will register hundreds and hundreds of people, so we want to show uh paginate that data and not show everything on the entire page. And a great way to utilize all that or to create all those features easier is using the Tanstack table. There are lots of UI libraries that can handle that, but in this case I'm just going with Tanstack table. All right, so let's. Uh, so what is Tanstack table? It's simply just a React table. It's simply just um, a library that helps you manage your table data in a much easier and concise way. Yeah. So enough of all that talk. Let's jump right into the code. Okay. Okay, so we are having our app running. So so first we need to install um the Tanstack table. So just run this command. So yarn add Tanstack React table. Great. So we have our React table installed. So we just go to the participants page. All right. So we'll be updating the code or the table here to use the new React table that we have. So to do that, we need to bring in our table. So bring table in use React table, and this taking a number of options. So the first option that we need is the columns. So what are the columns that this table is supposed to show? Okay, so let's, in order to create these columns, there is a simple helper that there's a function that Tanstack table, a React table provides us, which is create column helper. Okay, sorry, let's get rid of that. So let's bring this in. So bring columns, and when using the React table, when you are creating the columns inside the component, you need to wrap it with a use memo in order to prevent multiple re-renders. Okay, so we have that, and so with we call it the column helper. Then we have the create column helper. So it's a simple function that returns you know a variable. It's a function that returns an object that will help us to define our columns for us easily. And if we want a better type definition, so over here, the create column helper is a generic function, so we can pass out the object type or the type definition of the objects that we want to create the columns for. So in this case, we pass in the participants over here. All right, so to do this, we need to return an array. So it takes in an array of, so we have an array. Then the first column that we want to show is the name. Okay, so we have the column dot, and column helper returns an object and it has these three values. So we have accessor, display, and group. The accessor is to show a single column with one particular data in it. The display is mostly meant for columns that is meant to display some sort of information or some structure or something like that. And group is when you are grouping your columns under when you want to group a number of columns under one main column. So you use the group for that. So in our case, we just need the accessor. And the assessor it takes in a function. So the first parameter is which of these keys that we want to show, which of these fields that do you want to show for this particular column. In this case, we just want to show the name, and it takes in a second parameter in which you're going to define the structure of this particular column. In this case, well, in this case, the header. So what is the header? What is the column header? In this case, these ones. So what is this column header? In this case, it's just going to be a name. For the headers, you can also pass in a component, but in this case, just passing a name is fine, and the cell. So the cell are these cell values in here. So what are we going to show for these particular cells? So it can return any components or any value that we want. So the cell takes in, let's say, I don't know, let's call it an info. And the info is an object that has a number of values. So it has a column. So get value is the value that is going to be assessed for each of the rows. In this case, it can be Thomas Edison, Merrimore, or Yellen Boyle. So that's the get value. And we also have the render value that we are rendering some values. We also have the row. So row is the entire row object with other fields in there that we utilize later on. All right. But in this case, we simply want to return this particular data structure. Sorry, this component right here. So we simply grab that and sorry, not that. We just return that, and we are going to change this one from participant name to info.get value, so which will be a string or which will be the name. And here we need the participant ID, but we can't access that from get value because it only contains this name, the name of the participant. So in order to access the participant ID, we first need to go to the row, then original. So original will be the whole value or the whole participant object passed to it, and then we want to pass in the participant ID there. All right. So with that, we can then define the other columns as well. So let's do that. Column help assessor. So in this case, the next one will be the age. So it has the same structure. In this case, so you have the age, but the cell is simply just returning it's simply just returning a single value. So just passing in the info.get value is more than enough. All right. So the next column is the address, which is also doing the exact same. So we can just, let's grab this one and change this from age to address. And that's that. So we're going to do the same for telephone, email, amount, status. Right, so let's grab this. Let's change these ones. So we have this one will not be address, but it will be telephone. This one will be email. Change that to email. The next one will be the amount. Get that for the amount. And the other is for the status group and group ID or the assigned groups. So let's simply grab this, get for that ones. All right. So this one will be the status. This one will be the group ID. The group. Let's call it a assigned group. All right. And lastly the is the actions. All right. So in the last column, we are going to use the display. So since we are not showing any one particular data, we are just displaying a link and a button. So we're just going to use the display, and the display takes in an object. So it just takes in the column definition. So in this case, we need the header. So we can provide the header. So let's say we can say this actions, and we need the cell. So the cell, we're going to return this these two objects here. So let's grab this. Let's create a fragment since React only returns a component, and this one returns as a function. So sorry, it takes in an info. So we're doing the exact same. So we're going to change it from info to row.original.participant ID. And in this case, we're just going to return info.row.original since you're passing in the whole participant object. All right. So that's that. We also need to pass in the handle participant deletion, which is the function here. So we need to pass that inside what's it called? Our column definition. But first, we need to change this to React callback. So let's change this. We use the use callback since it's going to be passed as uh, what's it called? Array dependency to the columns. Now let's fix the definition here. So we pass in the mutation. Sorry, so we need to bring the mutation all the way up before that. Okay, so you have the handle participant deletion. Let's bring that here. Okay. All right, so we have our column definition. We have our column defined. Now we also need to bring in the data. Now the data is going to come in from query.data since it's query.data since it's already a list, but it doesn't accept null or undefined. So we just simply bring in an empty array. So that's if there's no data, just use the empty array. All right. But we also need to, before we can actually pass the data here to the React table, we need to memorize it. So we're going to do the exact same that we did for the columns. So we're going to get data. So we're going to use memo, pass in the memo, pass in the query.data. Since that's all that we need, let's get rid of that. Since we don't, it's just an inline. You can pass in that. All right, so once we have our data memorized, the next thing that is required from React table is to get the role model. So what is the role model? So the role model is the structure or how you want to define how your roles are created, how the data is handled, and all that. That's what the role model or this get role call model is. But React query, sorry, not React query, but the React table already comes with its own defaults, the core role model, which is going to define the structure, the basic structure that we want our roles to be in. So with just this, we have our information ready, or everything that we need for the columns, and we can then update our table to reflect that. So the first things first is for the table head, we need to render show all the table heads or the headers. To do this, we need first we need the header groups. So if you've defined any groups, we need to first grab all those header groups, then later we render out the headers themselves. So first we're going to use the get header groups. So this one returns an array, so we're going to map that. I'm going to have a header group. That's header group, in which is going to return a table row. In this case, we need a key, so it's going to be the header group.id, provides us with an ID. And inside the header group itself, we need to get the headers, which also returns an array. We grab that. Then we have the header. Then we're going to simply return the table header. We need a key, so we get the header.id to provide us with a key. And we also need to we need the header. We need to perform a check. So header dot is placeholder. So the placeholders are created when you define groups. So let's say, for example, you group the age, name, and address under one grouping, but for the others, you haven't grouped them under any headers. So what React table will do is it will create duplicates of these the telephone email accounts, to create duplicates of those headers and set them as placeholders, since the header groups must come first before the columns underneath it. So it's going to create a placeholder for those ones so that it's uniform. Then when it moves on to the next line, we actually see the columns themselves. So that's what this placeholder check is for. So if it's a placeholder, then we do not want to render anything, so we just set it to null. But if it's not a placeholder, then we actually want to do a flex render. So with flex render, we need to pass in the header column definition, and we need the header. So with that, then we also need to get a header that gets context. All right. So what this one will do is going to generate or create these columns, or these values, well, not values. Okay, let's say it's values or components or whatever. It's going to create them within the table header that we've defined. So we can get rid of all these ones. Now we also need to these things. I don't know if this will fix it, but whatever. I don't know if it can be fixed. Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so we need to then move on to the table body. The table body is relatively simple, just like what we have for the table the headers. So what we're gonna do is inside the table body, we need to get the table dot get row model. So we get a row model, then the rows. So all these rows. So let's Thomas Edison, Mary Moore, Yellen Barrio, all those people is going to get the rows for those ones. Then we're going to map over that. So we have a row, and we need to return this table row there. Yeah, table row component. We need to get the key, very important. The row.id always provides us with the key. Then we also need to do a little bit of a check here to get visible cells. So which of these cells are visible? There may be cases where you want to remove some of the cells and we don't want to show those ones. So this get visible cells is going to ensure that we only get those cells showing. So get that cell and want to show the so we want to show the cell inside the table cell. So let's also grab the ID for that. So the cell.id. And the same, we do a flex render. So we have the cell column definition, and we have our cell, and we have the cell.get context. So that's that. So we can get rid of what we have down here, and it should work as we expect it to. So let's save that. And as you can see, everything is still the same. Nothing has changed except the amount. We need to bring this get amount paid. Um, where is it? All right, so we have amounts here. So we can move this outside of, can move it outside or make it a callback. This one is not dealing with any state, so I think it's best to just move it outside of our component. and then utilize it deep within the yeah, right here. All right, so there we go. Let's save that, and we have our values back in there again. Nice. So why all this bother with these columns and everything is, well, it helps us to add table features pretty easily. For example, filters. So if we want to filter this column, let's say by name, age, address, you can do that easily with React table, and that's what we're going to do. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Do let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Like, dislike, share, or anything that is to your fancy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. God bless you.